The purpose of my ride today was to help get my teammate his third climbing PR in 3 weekends. Hey cycling community, this is Steve Grusis of Cycling Green. That yellow sign marks the beginning of the climb. This is a 6.68 mile climb averaging 7%. However, there's a rolling section toward the top and there are 2 walls, one of which is over a kilometer long, averaging between 12 and 15%. While my goal for this ride is to be able to help Darren with his goal, it was questionable whether I was going to be able to do this. Typically, I'm a stronger climber than Darren. However, I'm still dealing with my collarbone injury, and Darren is consistently improving. While it was a big ask for me to pace him all the way up to break his current 58-minute PR, at this point it looked like I wasn't going to be even able to stay on his wheel. To get to the bottom of this climb, we rode with 3 other teammates at an endurance pace for about 90 minutes. So there was no lack of warm-up on my part. I was pulling between 3 and 350 watts just to stay on his wheel. After a minute and a half at this pace, I grunted something like, "Good job," and then I backed off into like the mid-200s in terms of my wattage. I just couldn't keep up with him. I wasn't giving up completely, although I wasn't sure what was going to happen next. The fact that Darren has been riding strong, and that he got PRs in each of the past 2 weekends on big climbs, in combination with my hypoxia that I was experiencing at the moment, it didn't occur to me that he started off too fast. It did not take me that long to recover, because when I came off his wheel initially, I was not redlining. I just backed off about 50 to 70 watts. Darren's pace was starting to get to him. He had to back off. He didn't want his heart rate to go above 166, his maximum is 171. That, in combination with my feeling just good enough, I was able to reconnect with him a little after the half-mile mark. As Darren felt better, he took off again. That, however, was not the best idea. You start accumulating more waste material than you can filter out, and then you're forced to slow down. The best thing you can do is keep it a little conservative at the start, then keep it even the rest of the way. At 1 mile into the climb, marked by these overhead wires, I was finally able to start meeting my goal. Once I rounded this curve, I was able to go to the front and start my pacing. With this being the 3rd week of a 4-week block on strength training, of on-the-bike strength training, which included group rides of long climbs similar to this, my legs felt labored when I started off this morning. I considered it a blessing to be in the position I was right now, and I wanted to stay there as long as I could. That meant doing all the right things. Fortunately, I brought my 1129, so with my compact gearing, that meant I got to rely more on my aerobics rather than my muscular system for this challenging climb. I also had to keep the topography in mind. Even though the road conditions are good, when they resurface these roads, they stopped at the chip ceiling. So I had to make sure that I went on as smooth a section as possible. That meant usually rolling over 2 areas: painted lines and the dark surfaces, where it was mostly smooth with little or no chip seal. The 3rd topological area that I had to be aware of to make my life easier was the gradients. So take for example this right turn that we're doing. It would seem like being on the inside would be the shortest path to go, but being on the outside, I bypassed that little kicker that's toward the end of the curve. I noticed that Darren took the inside. Now, if he was a small spider monkey type of climber, that would have been okay, but he's a big guy like me. So in that case, it's best to stay away from those sharp kickers and try and keep your gradient as even as possible. As we got to the end of this small flat section at the 2 mile mark of this climb, I called for Darren to stay on my wheel and that we'd go to on the outside, just for the purpose of having a smoother gradient, because this thing kicks up. As we passed our second non-climber teammate who started off well ahead of us, Darren was sticking to the parameters that I had mentioned earlier. He was keeping his heart rate between 160 and 166. Whenever he'd hit 166, he would back off just a bit. In turn, that gave me a chance to gladly back off. When I noticed that he was more than 2 bike lengths off my wheel, I would dial back just a bit, and I was glad whenever I had to do that. Coming up on the right, you'll see a set of mailboxes. This is the first of 2 time checks. I told Darren that if we get here by 30 minutes, then he'll have a very good chance of setting a new PR. By the time we got there, it was a little over 32.5 minutes. I thought we still had a chance, but I just wasn't sure. These mailboxes led into the S turns, where you definitely wanted to watch what side of the road we were going to be on because of gradient changes. These steep S turns led into the first wall, and it wasn't short. Once you get on top of that wall, you turn left and then you go up another wall. While I was using every bit of my 29, Darren had a 32 that he was very appreciative of, especially since he used up all that energy in the first half mile of this climb. Once we got to the top, I signaled for Darren to get on my wheel and just stay there. There was a curve coming up where people don't often take the line that I do, and taking my line can save you up to a second, maybe a second plus. There are a lot of rolls in this section, big rolls that will just suck the energy out of you. You don't have a lot of energy left at this point because the end is almost near. Energy is what you need because of what is coming up. This rolling section leads to the final part of the climb, of the wall, the fire station wall, 0.7 mile, ranging up to 12%. I told Darren it was best to be nowhere near spent when he got to the bottom of the wall, because if you were anywhere close to spent, it was going to do nothing but cost you time. If you were feeling good, it will take you about 7 minutes. If you weren't feeling good, it could be 10 or more. As it turned out, we were able to recover enough from our half-mile sprint at the beginning, and we climbed the wall in 8 minutes. This enabled Darren to beat his old PR by 3¼ minutes. I threw some data on the screen that you may find interesting. The thing that pops out to me is the weight difference and the wattage difference. There's a 12-pound difference between us, and that's just body weight. This doesn't include any bike weight difference, and I'm sure Darren's bike is lighter than mine. Also, the 27-watt average difference. When you combine the two, that's about 2 watts per pound. The last major difference in the data is the intensity level. Even though Darren's pretty consistent and I'm coming back from my injury, I believe it is training styles that is the cause. While I'm getting ready for next year's race season, Darren has a much more recreational outlook when it comes to bike riding. So for Darren, it was 3 weekends of big climbs with 3 PRs. It's tough to beat that. I hope you enjoyed this video and got something out of it. Look for more details on this ride on my Strava account. I have it linked below. And remember, comment, like, subscribe. The Cycling Greek.